Hi, welcome to Video Games Revisited. Today we're going to be playing Star Trek Generations Beyond the Nexus for the Game Gear. This game was released in 1994 by Absolute Entertainment and is based on the movie Star Trek Generations. An identical version has also been released on the Game Boy, the only difference between the two being the Game Gear has a nice variety of colours to play with. The look of the game is as to be expected and is quite a good representation of how the TV series and the film look. The colours are correct, the look of the various ships and characters are all pretty accurate, and the Star Trek theme is present at several points during the game, which is always great to see on licensed games. Star Trek Generations roughly follows the plot of the movie, and the game is split up across three distinct kinds of gameplay. The player will find themselves either piloting one of a couple of ships from a first-person perspective, solving one of a couple of different styles of puzzle as a crew member of the Enterprise, or playing a top-down action shooter game as one of the franchise's main characters on foot. These three types of gameplay are cut up and mixed together as the story progresses, so you never know what's going to come along next, which helps to keep the game exciting. And the three main types of gameplay are tweaked at various points to add a little bit of variety, which we'll see in a moment. So firstly, we have spaceflight, which can be subdivided into two different categories: combat and flight. During combat, you'll take control of one of the film's two main ships, and will have to shoot down either Romulan or Klingon enemies. The combat itself is quite basic, and it just involves pointing your ship roughly at the enemies and firing either your phasers or torpedo-like energy weapons. And after you've done enough damage, the ship will explode and the stage is over. Unfortunately, the combat is rather sluggish, and you'll spend most of your time looking for the ships and trying to distinguish whether it's the ship you can see in the distance or the planets that sometimes appear in these levels. And the amount of damage that's needed to finish off the ships takes a lot of time to inflict and really drags out the combat a lot longer than I would think necessary. Thankfully, your ship is equally difficult to take down, but when it comes to fighting the enemies, they appear to either come out of nowhere, take a pot shot and then disappear, or attack you from behind, leaving no real way for you to defend yourself effectively. Granted, there is a combat map included, however it's pretty badly implemented, and whilst it shows you the positions of your enemies in real time, it's not really much use as your ship takes so long to turn around and the situation's changed by the time you've moved into position. However, the spaceflight section of this style of gameplay is a lot more fun, and it basically involves you flying through a series of gates within a time limit as quickly as possible. And it works really well. The controls respond nicely, you can clearly see which gate's coming up next, and when they're not on screen, a little arrow indicates the direction you need to move in, and it's definitely more fun than the straight combat when you're controlling the ship. So next we have the puzzle solving element of the game, and this again is divided into two distinct styles of gameplay. The first you'll come across almost immediately when playing the game, and it's basically a variation of the board game Mastermind. You're given a certain amount of time to match a variety of tiles into their designated slots and get them in the right order. At the end of each attempt, you are told both how many tiles you've got correct and how many of them are in the correct position. It's basically a mix of guesswork and logical thinking, and both isn't particularly fun and brings down the tempo of the game substantially. Also, due to the limitations of the size of the screen, you can only see your last three attempts, and later on in the game where you've got more tiles to work out the order of it, it really does become a pain to remember which combinations you've submitted previously. The second type of puzzle game is a variation on the popular classic Pipe Dream, and basically involves you matching up pipes from point A to point B within a certain time limit, and after a while the energy will start flowing through these pipes, really putting the pressure on you to get the rest of them laid so that it doesn't get to the end of the pipe before you get to point B. However, it's pretty unforgiving and you do get a lot of junk pipes that you'll just need to end up throwing to one side, and you can't navigate your way across the maps particularly quickly, meaning it's a lot safer to kind of stick in your immediate area and just dump all the chaff off to one side until you get a bit that fits what you need to do. However, if you do run out of space, you can place two different kinds of pipe on top of each other. However, this will destroy the 8 tiles that surround this tile, so is only to be used in circumstances where you're not going to undo all of your hard work. These niggly points aside, it does fit the style of the overall gameplay a lot better and adds a lot of tension to the game. So lastly, we have the top-down action segments of the game, in which you'll either have to shoot down a certain amount of enemies in a deathmatch style situation, or simply survive from point A to point B as one of the cast members. The combat dynamics are fairly lame, and your character's quite large and bulky, meaning you can rather sluggishly move around the map and kind of take shots around corner with your one arm that can shoot. But it works okay, it's nothing too special. However, the enemy respawning does need a little bit of work, as you'll find more often than not you'll shoot an enemy and he'll immediately start to regenerate in either the same position or incredibly close to you, and depending on what kind of situation you're in, will even make it incredibly easy or incredibly unfair when they pop up and take a pot shot at you. Right, so that's about it for Star Trek Generations, and I'm torn about my final conclusion of this game, as it has a nice mix of both the space combat, storytelling and dialogue, the on-foot combat and adventuring, and the sci-fi technology elements. And as such, it's quite a good representation of what Star Trek's all about. However, all of these different elements don't really work together, and in some places are pretty badly executed, which makes it a hard game to recommend for gamers. So whilst it's not the best Star Trek game in the world, fans of the franchise may want to give it a quick go, if only to get the story and to play as some of their favourite characters. But other than that, I'd recommend giving this one a skip. So, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Take care.